Hi, hello, and welcome to the presentation. I will hopefully take you boldly where no one has gone before when it comes to the security and securing the environment and also our all IT processes and so on during the whole software development lifecycle. My name is Jakub Sendor. I currently work as a delivery manager at the JLabs. And the agenda for today's presentation will be as following. So I will take a brief historical look at where this whole DevSecOps approach came from. What we really mean by when we say DevSecOps, right? It's kind of sounds like a buzzword. Uh, Probably it is, but I'll tell you also some practical. I'll tell you also some of the practical aspects of the DevSecOps approach. And also this sort of last part will be more practical introduction into things that you can do directly with your teams within your companies to take this next step in this transition to DevSecOps enabled company. My presentation will be around 25-30 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A, and as with the other presentations during the today's conference. So feel free to take a note. Also, I will be available in the Discord channel afterwards. If you have some questions, feel free to ask. A little bit background about myself. Before JLabs, I used to work at Yelp in their headquarters in San Francisco. So actually, starting in 2014 in London, I was heading their corporate security team. So working a lot in terms of projects like incident response, malware analysis, phishing, and so on. Phishing prevention, not phishing itself. Although we did some phishing as well. I'll tell about it a bit later during the presentation. And sort of at the start of my career, this first gig, more in the research space at the Security and Trust Research Labs of SAP in Sophia Antipolis in France. That was also quite interesting gig for me. I was laughing, especially 2 years ago when the general regulation on the data privacy was introduced. That I was working sort of on this topic before it was even GDPR was a thing. So kind of an interesting forecast of what was coming up. And obviously it's a little bit different right now that what we were working on back in the early 2010, 2011, and so on. So going back to the DevSecOps and the history, uh, sort of coming back to probably where this picture on the earlier slide was taken, when we were at the beginning of creating the process for software development, right? This waterfall approach was sort of more being looked at what companies were supposed to do, what the software teams were supposed to do. So we were first gathering requirements. It was taking like perhaps a few months to a year to get this all together. Then the design phase, then obviously the implementations or the sort of core phase where the software engineers were coming up. And then obviously after they were done, uh, perhaps even sometimes without full requirements, right? Because people were discovering that their requirements are not complete before actually stepping into the verification phase, then the maintenance. And in this classic approach, the security was always an afterthought, right? So perhaps someone thought about the security at the verification phase, right? They had some test cases when they were verifying whether the software that they produced was actually secure, had this quality of being proven to work against certain type of attacks and so on. Well, usually it was at the maintenance phase, right? Something wasn't working, someone was calling us up to fix it, and the security bugs were being fixed. Something that we remember from the early days of the Windows development, right? Windows 95, 98, when a lot of bugs were discovered, critical bugs. They had to go back to the fixes. They were shipping the service packs. I think it was even before widespread internet access, right? So perhaps this service packs were shipped on CDs and or even floppy disks before that, right? So something like that. So security was unfortunately an afterthought in all this waterfall approach. Well, great if someone thought about them during the requirements phase, right? But usually it was like on this picture at the very end. So actually, Microsoft came up with the something that they called or coined this name, secure software development lifecycle. So in this sort of classic model of still following the waterfall approach, with us starting with the training phase. So obviously you have to train your employees when you want to talk about them going and implementing something secure in the classical requirements phase and so on. Then they added this response phase sort of as a maintenance phase, so something when you need to look and actively monitor what the what's happening with your software execute incident response plan, as we see on this detailed view at the development lifecycle. So we had some of the approaches that we use right now, like threat modeling, something that was already mentioned today by Kuba Kałużny. We had some static analysis during the implementation phase, so sort of more looking from the code perspective and whether it is produced in a secure manner, whether we are following the secure coding practices and so on. We also had fuzz testing, so trying to verify the code with something unexpected, like just shooting the unintelligible, perhaps, strings of data and seeing how it behaves. And then, say in mid 90s or perhaps around this time, the whole agile approach to software development came in, right? And it sort of turned everything around. So we no longer think about software development as this waterfall sort of step by step, but rather iterative approach where we understand that perhaps at the very beginning when we start, we don't have all of the requirements. So we have to be agile, we have to react in sort of more elastic fashion to what the life is bringing to us. And this, in my opinion, this agile approach to software development sort of naturally transitioned to DevOps approach, right? So we no longer think about the just software development as this agile thing. You see, even from this sort of picture here, it's a little bit more complex than that. We have here like this two iterative loops creating this sort of infinite sign here. So we add this things that not only our software team has to take care on, but also operations team and so on. Well, you've heard about DevOps today a lot. Also in Mikhail's presentation, there was great introduction to all the different aspects and so on. So taking it even a step further, DevSecOps say it's basically it. It's adding naturally, sort of like a next transition, adding what we've already seen in the classical approach when it comes to security testing. All this sort of practices, all this good behaviors, all these good methods that we've seen, like static analysis that we've already seen in the secure software development lifecycle by Microsoft, threat modeling, penetration testing is also the iterative test phase, and even going beyond that with more and more agile approaches to how we develop, test, and secure our software. So why do we actually need DevSecOps? I took a freedom here of copying the DevSecOps manifesto. If you go to this website, devsecops.org, it's actually already a couple of years old. And similar to what the original Agile manifesto, it tries to stress out some of the things that we will do that in the past were sort of well being forgotten, or say these things on a right hand side we're taking the priority over these things on the left hand side. So just giving a spotlight on this data and security science over fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Actually, something that I was hesitant to start my presentation with, because DevSecOps is actually it. It's not about creating this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's more about actually facts and something that we definitely are being sort of challenged in the past few years, right? So obviously it was very easy for the security experts to, and even these days we see it, right? You go to the websites like even CNBC, like major broadcasting and news outlets, and you see headings like that. Even right now in the past few months when we were transitioning all to work from home, there was obviously spike in Zoom usage. We use Zoom even to broadcast this presentation here to you today. Even these days, that people are trying to creating this need of security. Like, you need to think about security firsthand, because it's, if you forget, something wrong may happen, and so on. So I was hesitant to start with it, but even still, I'm bringing it, because even myself, as a sort of huge DevSecOps uh, person, and someone who tries to live to according to this manifesto that we've seen, even for me, it is hard to forget about these things that we are trying to how we were trying in the past to convey a message. But obviously, we have to think about being more fact-based these days, and not only create this sort of fear and doubt and uncertainty. We have to be based on facts. So what DevSecOps really is, to start with, I actually got a great read from Cloud Security Alliance. They have put together the 6 pillars of DevSecOps. And I think this is a great introduction for someone who's already familiar with DevOps, already familiar with the modern software development practices based on Agile, like uh, even Lean Agile, Scrum, and so on. So this 6 pillars, and I will go over the next few slides to describe each of them, and sort of how I personally think about each of them when we are talking about bringing DevSecOps to your organization. So collective responsibility. Uh, Again, you have to convince your stakeholders to take security seriously. And as I've seen before, it might be hard. You definitely have to start with sort of trying to convey a positive message, rather than try to scare people with, oh, if you don't think about phishing prevention, we'll get our email accounts compromised, and thanks to that, this and this will happen. Well, this is obviously something that at the end of the day, probably you will have to convey in your message, but start to think about just getting your board level interest fast with the importance of how security, why it is important for you. Try to gain some facts from your environment, and see some actual data from your environment, and why they need to take interest in security. A lot of companies started doing that, and we see even as great adoption as going to incorporate chief information security officer into the boards. So, well, if you go on LinkedIn, you will see even 45,000 results for CISO roles. So that's great. That's great. And if you get this kind of support from your company, this is perfect. The next step on collective responsibility is awareness and education. So start with training. Everyone needs to be trained, as Microsoft sort of forecasted early in their approach to security lifecycle. You need to start with training, and this goes without saying. Even uh, within the DevSecOps, you have to train people, and be specific with your training for the specific roles. And start very small. Even just go to OWASP, try to show them the top 10. What we do here at JLabs is, during our onboarding, during the first week, when someone joins, we just go with them together through OWASP top 10, and we show this as a great example of how everyone can get familiar with security topics, and why it is important for them. And obviously, the last part of collective responsibility is that everyone is responsible. So it's not only your developers, your DevOps engineers, executives, for sure, as I've mentioned, non-technical roles as well, your financial guys, your product people. They need to know about security and why it is important. Then, sort of going to the topic of collaboration and integration, so the next pillar, try to think about security as an enabler rather than a blocker. And this will help you to convey these earlier messages to the board, to the regular users, and so on. So in this case of Zoom, I was showing earlier, starting with the positive message, right? So rather showing how your product is superior to your competition, thanks to the security features that you were thinking at the fest from the beginning, right? So start with this positive narrative. More on the collaboration and integration. So great presentation from Kubat today about threat modeling and sort of the Black Ops approach. You already know how to do it. Start with identifying the threats, do it early enough, and do it together with your team. And don't overthink it, right? So start with as simple resources as OWASP Top 10. And if you are fulfilling all of the, you are preventing against all of the top 10 vulnerabilities, then you can start and start your journey and go even further with that. The next pillar, pragmatic implementation. I think this is really important because when you actually start thinking about starting small and bringing more tools to your environment, not all of the tools and approaches may be suitable. So start with something very easy and try to build on top of that. I will show some examples later in my talk of starting just with the very basic open source tools and then building on top of them some more um, uh, more robust alerting environments and so on. And then bridging compliance and development. So again, in the spirit of one of the previous pillars that was about collaboration, again, we need to not only think about our development team as a silo, our security team as a silo, our operations team as a silo. This is all one company, and think about it as like a cross team endeavors and cross team collaboration that has to happen and has to be cherished in your company. So security by design sounds like a buzzword, but think about security from the very beginning, right? Even at the architecture phase, when you are trying to think which tools, which technologies you'll bring into your project. And then obviously go further, code audits and so on, tools that will help you to secure your code base. And when we are talking about code base, automation obviously is a next natural step. So great that this 6 pillars talk about automation. We've seen it also in the previous talk by Mikhail when he was talking about DevOps. Obviously, part of the DevOps endeavor is automation, and naturally, DevSecOps also aims to use and ride on this bandwagon of automation and bringing the right tools and integrating it with your existing tools and automating all the processes. So that's in a nutshell the whole story when it comes to automating the security. And process automation is probably the biggest challenge, and at the same time brings you the most value. And the last pillar, measurement, monitoring, report, and action. Think about some metrics that you can measure. If you don't measure, you won't see a progress, and it'll be hard for you to judge whether you're moving in the right direction. So deployment frequency is natural DevOps metric. So why not also enable it with your security effort and see how much time it takes you to patch vulnerabilities and what is your test coverage, right? As simple metrics as that. If you see movements in the right direction, you'll see it right away. And now talking about journey to DevSecOps, so how to bring it all together and sort of building on top of the 6 pillars, how to bring and build and go towards or even beyond secure organization. So I split this part into 4 different categories, sort of based on these pillars, but going into more details into these 4 areas. So starting small, iterating fast. As I mentioned, early education is really important. What do we mean by that? Start with awareness trainings. Just start with basic awareness training for everyone. Everyone needs to know and needs to buy into this game why security is important. So it's great that we are talking at such conference as DevOps Days about security, because actually my next thought is about something as simple as buying someone a ticket to the security conference, right? We actually have next week in Krakow, or shall I actually say virtually or remotely, the Confidence Conference, which is a great local security conference. We have well, this year, perhaps it may sound funny or not funny at all of these conferences are remote, right? So it's even easier to access them. The knowledge is there for everyone to take. So start with that. Encourage people on your team to go to join these talks, even listen to them offline, because all of them should be available afterwards, and so on. And threat modeling, so you've heard a lot about it today already, so I won't go maybe into much details because you already know how to do it. I will just bring one example actually from SAP. We used to play there this elevation of privilege card game when we were looking at some of the architecture designs and architecture proposals from our architects. It's great, a lot of fun to play it. It's based on this Adam Shostak book about threat modeling. The book is also very interesting and something that you should read or encourage your team to read. And it's a great and fun way to talk about security. OWASP has also their own approach in a similar fashion called OWASP Cornucopia. Go check it out. Even on Amazon, I found something like Backdoors and Breaches, incident response card game. A lot of fun. Just buy it for your team, $10, perhaps not too much. I hope there is some online version right now. There is for sure online version for the Elevation of Privilege card game, because obviously something that may come in very handy this time. As a part of a welcome pack for DevOps Days, we've received this games, board games. It'd be great if perhaps next year, or as an extra, this or similar game would be distributed with your welcome package. It would be really great, because then immediately you can even play during the conference. Be inclusive and involve everybody. Something I already touched earlier when we were talking about collaboration. One idea that you can implement is security heroes. So trying to nominate people from your teams to be dedicated security savvy persons that will either be in a close relation to the security team, central security team, if you have one, or just be the sort of bootstrap of the security team. If you don't have a security team dedicated to security team, perhaps just security savvy people gathered together will be the bootstrap for this team. And start with fun activities like Hacktober. October is coming up in a month. Actually, something that Facebook came up with a couple of years ago. You already see 2012, so nothing new. They started by introducing some of the interesting games during October, rewarding people with T-shirts, post stickers, and so on for the behaviors, for the good security behaviors that were displaying. Also, European Union is trying to take this initiative. So there is Cybersecurity Month in the EU. Also, there is this event registration. You can register your events and so on during October, and also check out the events that are happening. Probably more online this year, so even a greater chance to join them, because you don't have to move anywhere. And getting the right tools. So I will focus on these three aspects when it comes to the tooling: incident response, security incident, and even management system, or SIM for short, and threat hunting. But there are more and more, actually. So the list could go on and on with the different type of tooling that when we are talking about securing our environments. And it sort of goes back to this proactive security monitoring versus the being reactive towards the information on the incident. So going to the DevSecOps manifesto. And great and well, hopefully still free tool to use is Elasticsearch, open source. You can bootstrap your security incident and even monitoring system with Elasticsearch, and add on top some visualizations with Kibana and so on. What we've built at Yelp was Elasticsearch, ElastAlert, so Elasticsearch alerting system. It was even before Elastic introduced their own, so it was quite popular and still is actually. You can build some alerts, say if you see a spike in number of unsuccessful logins to your website and so on. So creating alerts based on that. Other tools, Splunk also talks about threat hunting is a big thing this past few years. CrowdStrike, something that I personally used in some of the previous jobs. Very good tool for discovering threats and so on. I don't want to be sort of like endorsing any vendors here, so also bringing some more of the open source for balance. Zeek, or what used to be called Bro, network security monitoring tool, something that you can also use to your in your tool set. And yeah, the last part, measure, don't be afraid of course correction. I think this is the most important part, because if you don't measure, you don't know if you're going in the right direction, as I said before. Think about the metrics. Again, vulnerabilities detected, so something more security specific, number of incidents. I'm always laughing because we used to have in our Yelp office a sort of cardboard with days since last incident, something that they also have on the construction sites, on the real construction sites. We used to do it for a couple of months. It was quite interesting just to see, whether we are actually doing a good job or not. Obviously, I think the more incidents, the better, perhaps, because that means that someone at least is using your software, right? So nothing to be afraid of, but at the same time, mean time to response, something to take care of and then see whether it's doing good. And retrospect. So talk often about what's working, what's not, and change the things that are not working. Take action and respond to it. So in summary, start small, educate everyone. Start with something easy as sending everyone to security conference. Plan and act, obviously the most important thing, to actually act and to not be afraid of changes. And this is nothing new, right? So actually I haven't talked about some breakthroughs, and perhaps some of the tools that you've seen are new to you. Perhaps you're using them every day. This is nothing new, nothing that you have to be scared of. Just act, be agile, and respond to what your team needs, and how you can modify your everyday software development processes to be more secure. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, I think now it's a great time for me to answer them, and obviously I'll be also available on a Discord channel afterwards.